The Brothers Karamazov, Book 2, Chapter 1, An Unfortunate Gathering, and they arrive at the monastery. In Book 1, we saw each of the main characters' history, a family history divided up into 5 chapters with 5 main characters, each given a chapter apiece, so that the narrator, now starting with the action in Book 2 through 12, the plot of the novel, doesn't have to stop and explain background for paragraph after paragraph. We sort of get Book 1 out of the way, and now we can start in Book 2 with the action of the novel. Now, I didn't want to get bogged down in Book 1 with too many details, but there is a few things that need to be said before we really get into the action of Book 2. And that has to do with the names. Now, it's a common, very cliche, not very funny joke to make fun of Russian novels for a few characteristics. They're always being made into memes and jokes about being too cold and too depressing and too sad. And maybe there's some truth to that. More on that later, I'm sure. But another joke that's often made about 1,000-page Russian novels is how many characters there are and how you can't keep track of the characters because all the characters have 15 different names. Now, this might be hard. With this book, I don't actually find it particularly hard to keep track of who is who, but it's just, it's not a fair joke. It's not a fair criticism. Even in English, you've got someone named Bill. And if you're reading a novel in English or watching a television show in English, he is referred to as Will, Willie, Bill, Billy, and all the names in English have some variation, and then someone has a nickname, and it kind of sounds like they're a proper name, and easily you can immediately get to 6 or 7 names. And so this is done in Russian, and of course, if you don't speak Russian, it's a little bit more difficult than it is in understanding in English, but even not being Russian readers, we can still understand how the names are related. So I don't think it's that difficult to figure out who's who. Another thing we want to look at is how Russian names work. And usually your middle name is either, if you're male, your middle name is the first name of your father. So my father's first name is Nick. So my middle name would be Nicholas, Nikolaevich, or something like that. And then if you're female, you have some derivation of your father's first name, Nicola or something to that effect. And so sometimes you can figure out who a character is just by that. So we met all the Karamazov boys in the first book, and we know that whether we're talking about Dmitri, Ivan, or Alyosha, we know that their middle name will be Fyodorovich because their dad's first name is Fyodor. So that's a little dry background on names, but I think one thing is interesting that we need to trace through the rest of the novel. You know, you can tell a lot about a person, especially if you don't know very much about them. An initial impression, you can tell a lot about a person, how other people address them. Now, if someone is addressed formally by their proper first name or by their title, you can tell that the people addressing probably don't have a warm or familial or buddy-buddy relationship. Now, if you look at your immediate or extended family and your close circle of friends, if you're like most people, you don't all address each other in your immediate family by your proper names. You have little abbreviated names, you have nicknames, and abbreviations are usually to show warmth and compassion. And so as you read the book, take note of which names characters use for other characters. So does someone refer to Dmitri as Dmitri, his proper name, or Mitya, his nickname or his abbreviated name? And if that other character refers to him as Mitya, then you know, right off the bat, you know that they have a warmer relationship. And you can see what percentage of characters refer to Dmitri as Dmitri and what percentage of characters refer to him as Mitya. And then you'll know about his backstory. Just from that one little clue, you can sort of peel back years and years of history and see, oh, that this is a person who has a lot of close friends or has real relationships where people can call him Mitya rather than Dmitri. And the same with Alexei or Alyosha. See how many people refer to him more warmly as Alyosha. And I think this is particularly indicative when you look at Ivan, a buddy, abbreviated form of Ivan would be Vanka or Vanya, and you'll see precious few times in the novel anyone feeling warm in Ivan's presence to call him by any other name than his proper first name. So watch out for those names and understand those names, and you might get a little bit more depth of the novel reading through the first or second time if you sort of keep score, maybe even unofficially, but just sort of notice that every once in a while, whether the proper or shorthand version of the name is being used. So at the outset of Book 2, the action starts and the characters arrive at the monastery. So 4 characters arrive at the monastery. In the first carriage, we have Musov and Kalganov, and in the second carriage, we have Fyodor and Ivan. Now, who was Musov? Musov, we saw in the first book, was a cousin of Fyodor's first wife, and her name was Adelaida, and she is Dmitri's mother, and she was a distant cousin of Peter Musov, and we saw that Musov was sort of emblematic representative of educated, European, enlightened, cultured elite, and he's just back in this small town for a spell. He's the kind that went off to Paris, educated in Paris, and he stayed in high society there in Europe. And so Musov is there with Kalganov. Kalganov is a young man related to he and Adelaida, and he's about to go to university, and he's here basically on a glorified field trip, just here to learn about what monks are like and how Orthodox Christianity works. Bringing up the rear is the carriage that houses Fyodor and Ivan. And so they're all coming to the monastery where Zosima is going to arbitrate. He's going to advise and counsel in the dispute between Dmitri and Fyodor, and the dispute is over money. Well, at least that's what you think at this point. If you've only read Book 1, and as you start to read Book 2, it takes a while to realize that, yes, the dispute is over money, but the dispute goes much deeper than that. It's the reason that they're disputing over money that you don't know about yet that is the heart of the dispute. So those 4 characters have arrived at the monastery to see Zosima. We know Alyosha has become an understudy, a student, if you will, of Zosima. So Alyosha and Zosima are at the monastery, and these 4 arrive at the monastery. But there is a noticeable absence, and that is the whole reason for being at the monastery on this 11 a.m. on this autumn morning is to settle a dispute between Fyodor and Dmitri. And so immediately we realize at the beginning of this chapter that one of the 2 key players isn't there. So Dmitri's absence sort of looms over this entire section. What is missing? Why isn't Dmitri here? Why isn't he here to argue his case against his father in front of Zosima? So they arrive at the monastery in their carriages, and they are underwhelmed at the facilities, and they're underwhelmed at the glory and the credit that they are not receiving. Nobody makes a big deal out of their arrival. Nobody is impressed with them. Even more than that, it seems like no one even cares that they were here or is expecting them when they arrive. So finally, a unimpressive man named Maximov greets the quartet and starts to take them through a small grove of trees called a copse, and COPSE, and takes them over to Father Zosima's his quarters, where he will meet them. While they're standing outside of Father Zosima's quarters, before they go in, they hear the message that they will be welcomed by the Father Superior. And maybe the first few times you've read the chapter, you sort of assume that Zosima is the Father Superior, but he's not the Father Superior, sort of an administrative head. So even though Zosima is no doubt the spiritual leader among the elders, the semi-famous and in the near geographical region, he's not the Father Superior. So this other man that you'll meet in just a few chapters has invited this quartet, as well as Maximov, to dinner, to dine after they speak to Zosima. So this meeting with Zosima begins Fyodor really turning on the cringe factor, really making you wince, really turning up his fool level to 1,000. And so what is the narrator doing? What is Dostoevsky doing? He's really beginning to contrast the ways of living. And so here you have Theodore, who stands for foolish buffoonery, who is uncomfortable with himself, who lies to himself, who lives for physical pleasure and not much else. Next to him, you've got Musov, who stands for enlightenment, educated, cultured ideas. And where does Dostoevsky put them? In the holiest, most basic, utilitarian, religious, holy, quiet environment. And there Dostoevsky just lets his characters bump up against each other. You've got the holiest of holy Zosima talking to the most foolish man possible, Fyodor, and offending the most educated, uptight, intellectual elite, Musov. And so that's sort of, I think, the 30,000-foot view of this chapter of what's going on. You've got these extreme version of the pursuit of the flesh, the pursuit of culture, and the pursuit of spiritual life, all bumping up against each other in this chapter, which allows Fyodor to just begin a rant that also covers the entire next chapter, a rant of absolutely foolish, cringeworthy type of stuff. So Maximov runs away after leading this party of four through the grove of trees outside of Zosima's residence, and Fyodor calls Maximov von San because he and Peter both know someone named von San, and it's really cringy when people do that when you're at, say, a restaurant and a waiter or waitress comes over and they have their name on the name tag, and you're with some older person who starts to joke about their name, and it's really cringy, and it's really, you put your head down and you just want them to stop talking. And then when they see that the waiter or waitress doesn't get their joke about their name tag having the same name as somebody you know, rather than just ejecting and walking away from the joke, they just go further and deeper, and it gets cringier and cringier, and the person is trying to back away from your table and go do their job, and the person you're with just keeps making worse and worse jokes to try to get out of the first joke. That's sort of the feeling you get here from Fyodor calling this man von San, and then Fyodor, not accustomed to practicing any religious faith, when he sees icons and when he sees religious imagery, he's crossing himself, but he's doing it all wrong. And then he feels so uncomfortable with himself in this quiet, holy, religious, sanctified place. What does he do? He starts to just start talking about everything he's heard about monks and religious monastic orders. And he talks about how they lock their gates so that no women are allowed, but yet there's secret hallways where women do come in, and Zosima goes out, and so all the while he's sort of insinuating or implying that there's a lack of holiness here, that they pretend to be these sexually pure men, but really they're sneaking women in, and he's contrasting that with a real religious order he's heard of, where they don't let women anywhere near their monastery, and also they don't even let female animals around their monastery. Then he looks around, and after he's made the whole Von San bit, and that really didn't work, and he's tried to cross himself, and that didn't really work, and he's accused them of sexual immorality, and all this has done is made Musov more and more uncomfortable and more cringy. Now he looks around and he sees, oh, there's someone who has taken care of the grounds. There's someone who's put time and effort into beautifying the grounds, and there's some fresh autumn flowers, and so now he turns a beautiful natural scene outside of Zosima's quarters into an accusation, and accuses them of being too rich, being greedy, because there's a nice garden outside of Zosima's cells. So he's accused them of sexual immorality, hypocrisy, of living large and being wealthy. And then when none of these really cringy comments are really working, what does he do? He starts talking to some monks about a former elder who was there, who would hit people and was abusive. And all the current monks can say is, that stuff really isn't true. So all the while, Fyodor is just playing up this role of buffoon, of this foolish man, making Musov and all of the monks totally uncomfortable. And really, Dostoevsky is contrasting Fyodor's loud, brutish, self-centered lies with the setting. And what's the setting? The exact opposite. Selfless, quiet, holy, simple, truthful, beautiful, like a flower. And so there could not be a more black and white, stark contrast between the character of Fyodor and the setting.